All the Feels Conversations. This podcast is a safe haven for emotions and feelings to be seen and shared. Here, we want to embrace all the feels, bringing us closer to ourselves and each other. This season, I'm having intimate, anonymous conversations with 100 men about their feelings. Why? Because society often tells men not to feel or express themselves, and this deeply affects our physical, mental, and spiritual well-being.
How important is a physical connection to you?
A physical connection is very important to me because it is, as I'm sure most of people will have heard this before, love language. It's one of my two predominant love languages, which is physical touch and quality time. So it's very, very important to me because I call myself a very tactile person. I'm very much known to be somebody if I like you, and that's just generally on a like basis. If I like you, I'm the kind of person that will do handshakes, hugs, high fives, fist pumps, body pumps, all those kind of things with people. Let's say even if there's like sporting colleagues or in a working office environment or just so physical contact is very important to me because it's my love language. Affection is how I affection is how I quantify it. If you are affectionate towards me, I can see it and I appreciate you for it. So intimacy is very important because I need to be able to hold your hand, feel your feelings, give you a hug, have closeness to you.
You know, you spoke a lot about your connection with your partner. What does having sex mean to you?
I think having sex is very important. I don't call it the be all and end all of our relationship because sex, yes, the physical act of sex is, sometimes let's be honest, it could be anywhere between 15 and 30 minutes, 40 minutes, whatever. And you get to the point where you start realizing that those acts don't have to go on for ages and ages. It's more about what are you communicating, how do you feel, the trust in the act. We when we initially met, we just did the dates and everything and
Mhm.
so forth. But there was a one stage where we did have a conversation about having sex, and I said to her, "Oh, maybe you weren't aware of this, but sex was never on the cards in the first 3 months." She's like, she was very surprised that I said that, and I was like, "It wasn't that I had a time limit. It was more that let me learn who you are. Let me become
Mm,
intimate with you in other ways before we have the sexual act. Because at the end of the day, I don't want to have a whole host of feelings and tell myself I'm in love with you or I want to be with you based on something which is so kind of fundamental and also foundational. It's a primal act, it's a primal instinct to want to have sex, but it's also a very deep spiritual connection when you do have sex. And
mm.
considering I'm a man and I'm saying this, it probably sounds weird, but sex is a very deep spiritual connection. You are leaving yourself very open and vulnerable to another person. If you aren't able and vulnerable and have a level of communication where those things uh, can be discussed openly, honestly, with vulnerability. If you don't have that with the person, then you will never ask and you make judgments. And you make blind judgments, unreasoned judgments. Just having just having sex is it's I think a lot of people don't realize how deep it is. Not just on the whole soul ties thing, it's on a very base mental and emotional level.
So then what is affection to you?
Affection to me is something slightly different. Affection to me can be emotional affection, verbal affection, physical affection. So it's things like being able to rub someone's back when they're tired or
Hmm.
lonely or just having that kind of connection. Small kisses on the forehead, small little kisses on the cheek. When
Hmm.
someone is when somebody is doing something nice for you, let's say you go over to your girlfriend's house or your boyfriend's house, and you know you do the dishes after dinner's been made or whatever it is, and you just go and give them a nice little kiss. Oh, thank you. Kiss them on the cheek, or rub their back, or
Mm-hmm.
oh, your feet hurt, or whatever it may be. Let me,
Yeah.
give you a back massage or neck massage or a head massage. Do you know people love having a head massage or love it? You notice that you had a head massage. You're, oh my God, it's
Oh, it took me to
amazing.
another place.
But you
Another
know what?
place.
That thing is spiritual. But the thing is, people don't really like if you're with somebody that you genuinely really like, and they give you a head massage, that
Mm.
boy,
Yeah,
oh
it's all.
gosh,
It's over.
an affection. Though I use the word affection as I'm saying it to you now, affection for me in my relationship with my partner and my significant other is going to be different from you and your partner and your significant other, because you need to understand what does affection mean to her, and
Yeah.
I need to know what it means to my partner, so we both have a understandable dialogue, and so we
Mm.
act. And affection isn't.
Who would you say taught you how to be a man?
This is the problem with, this is the challenge, and this is part of my trauma. I never had a male influence or a consistent male influence during my developmental years and my formative years to actually um, give me an understanding of what it was to be a man. So my ideology of a man probably came from films and TV and television shows. And as sad as that sounds, it's the truth, you know?
Mm.
There was no man in the home or uncles close by that I could actually say, this is who I'm going to learn from. There was no consistent boyfriend as well that I could say, okay, this is my stepdad, or, this is the guy I want to be. There was no male figure during that stage, which well, contributed to a lot of things, but we'll get to that later. At the age of 12, I moved to the UK. Um, just rather strange because it was a very significant point in my life, and I moved to the UK. So those, as I mentioned, formative years when I formed my identity. I moved to Southeast London. If you know anything about the 90s in London, being Nigerian in the UK in the 90s, well, early 90s, wasn't the easiest thing, because back then, not everybody wanted to tell everybody that their name was, Ade or Bibi or Kwame or Kunle or whatever it is, because the predominant black culture was Caribbean, as you can imagine. So, and so, and coming here from the US with a slight American accent, I was called Yankee by most of the guys in school or on my estate. And because of that, I identified predominantly with the Caribbeans. So most of the friends that I had during those years were Caribbean, even though
Mm.
I am Nigerian. So the guys that were around me were the ones where I developed my sense of self and man, but they weren't people who identified as me, if that makes sense. Obviously, now the culture is Afro beats and different types of African music. But growing up in those formative years, that was the music, that was the culture. And the culture didn't really have a lot of male figures. Like, I always think back now, even in those years, who were we looking up to? There was no male figure even on the TV that we could look
Mm.
up to in Britain. There was no, if we didn't have them in your house, they'll be on TV, or they'd be out on, for use of a better word, on road. But yeah, so a lot of my ideology, or understanding of being a man came externally, but not from the best influences that I can remember.
So what is respect to you? And then what is desire?
I would rather respect someone than fear them, but it's the same thing. It's understanding the influence or the power of something on oneself. For me, the word desire, I had to go down to, because we can all want, we have needs, we have different things, but desire is of the Father. The root of the word is a Latin word. It's de, spire, of the Father.
Mm,
I say this because one of my biggest desires is to build a family. I have a wife that I can
mm,
look after and children that are going to be my legacy and I can look after and provide for. And I've consistently wanted that. I'm a 43-year-old black man in London that went through a divorce and went through all the various. I've been in men's group. I sat around in circles with people who have had very, very strange relationships. Some of the stuff that I've heard in my time would make your eyes water.
mhm,
However, it has never stopped me, and it will never stop me from wanting to have my family, my family unit where my wife is looked after and cared for, and she's, the apple of my eye. And then I have my children, three, maybe four more, three or four plus. Um, and I'm looking after them. Do you know what I mean? It's something that I've consistently and I've always wanted. And that's my desire. And it comes from something that's more than just me.
mm.
It's of the Father, of God.
We spoke before we recorded about just normal chit chat, and
Hmm.
you spoke about going through some challenges where maybe you might have considered being heartbroken.
Yeah,
Um, would you mind sharing what that felt like and what emotions you felt?
right. So in
If you're able to, by the way, we can skip the question too.
no, 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 I'm fine. I'm more than able to. I've come to the
Okay.
point where sharing is caring. We use that term all the time, but sharing is caring. And if it helps somebody, then I'm more than able to. Um, with me, one of my biggest traumas of my life was for the longest time I put the idea of being married very, very high on my list. And I kind of traced it, I never wanted to have I wanted to be married before I had children. So I never had any, that various things happened because of that. I just always wanted to have at an age where I decided to get married, I was very, very specific and concise about who I was going to be with and, introduce them to my family, this, that, and the third. And I put all of these things as part of my um it I'm going to call it a very egocentric ideology. So when I got married and I was with somebody who ticked all the right boxes on paper, right age, right nationality, right look, right, all the things that kind of would qualify for me to be married. But the thing is, from an external point of view, it looked good. From an internal point of view, I hadn't done enough work on myself, or I hadn't done enough work on our relationship for me. Though we'd been together for a very long time and we ticked all the right boxes. Strangely enough, when you don't know who you are and you don't know the work, you will instantly come to challenges. You will come to hurdles.
Mm.
Mhm.
How do you feel when you're being vulnerable?
Now, this is the thing. I had a interesting conversation with my men's group recently. Can men be both masculine and vulnerable? And I've realized this, obviously, from the work that I've done and speaking with people and digging deep. Vulnerability is strength. Admitting vulnerability is strength. So if somebody attacks you emotionally and you're able to openly understand how that attack has affected you and you handle this, like I said, so one of the things I say is, sorry, every trigger, every instance of pain or weakness, or however you want to take it, yeah, is a moment of reflection.
With everything that we've said today, what do you think your role as a man is in today's society?
My role as a man in today's society is to show men how to find their purpose, not to tell them what their purpose, because that will never be my job. I'm not God, I don't do. But the thing is, it's about how to find your purpose. And I think one of the things that we don't have a lot of is going back to that question that you said about, who